I never thought words could break someone so completely. I knew they could hurt, of course. A sting, a bruise on the soul that fades with time, but I didn't think they could make someone pack up their entire life and simply disappear. I didn't think a single sentence could act as an earthquake, shaking the foundations of a shared existence until the whole structure crumbled to dust, leaving one person standing alone in the rubble, wondering how they had become the demolition crew. My name is Lydia, and I am 29 years old. Before I tell you what happened, before the judgment settles in, I feel I should start at the beginning. I married young. Looking back, maybe too young. I was 24, fresh out of college with a degree in marketing and a head full of romanticized ideals about what a life should look like. Caleb was 27, a structural engineer who seemed to have been born with a blueprint for a stable life already in hand. He had a good job, his own place, and a quiet confidence that felt like an anchor after watching my friends drift through their early 20s with men who couldn't even commit to a dinner plan. Caleb was different. He had everything figured out. The first few years were, honestly, wonderful. We were a portrait of suburban success. He worked hard. I climbed the ladder at my firm, and together we bought a charming 2-story house with a backyard that was perfect for a dog we always planned on getting. On paper, we were perfect. Our social media feeds were a curated gallery of happiness. Trips to the coast, anniversary dinners, smiling selfies on the new couch. We were living the life we were supposed to live. But paper yellows with time, and pictures can't capture the silence that fills the spaces between the smiles. Lately, it had felt like living with a ghost who just happened to pay half the mortgage. Caleb's presence had become a physical fact rather than an emotional one. He'd come home from his long hours at the firm, give me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek, and then retreat into his home office. The click-clack of his keyboard, the new soundtrack to our evenings. He called it important work stuff, a vague and impenetrable shield against any attempt at connection. He rarely acknowledged me unless I was physically standing in his line of sight, waving my arms like a castaway on a deserted island. Last month, I got the break I'd been working towards for years. My boss called me into his office and offered me a promotion to senior account manager. It meant more money, a bigger team, more responsibility, everything I had been striving for. I was electric with joy, buzzing with an energy I hadn't felt in months. I spent the rest of the day in a daze of excitement, already planning how we would celebrate. I bought a bottle of expensive champagne on the way home, the kind we saved for special occasions. That night, over the risotto I'd painstakingly stirred for 45 minutes, I told him. My voice was trembling with excitement as I laid out the details of my new role. I watched his face, waiting for the spark of pride, for him to share in my triumph. He glanced up from his phone, a flicker of something in his eyes before it was gone. "That's nice, honey," he said, his thumb immediately resuming its endless scroll. That was it. "That's nice, honey." The words landed in the middle of the dining table like a dead weight, extinguishing the celebratory flame inside me. I was bursting, overflowing with the success I had earned, and he couldn't even grant me 5 minutes of his undivided attention. The champagne remained unopened in the fridge. It had been like this for months. Every attempt I made to bridge the growing chasm between us was met with a polite, dismissive wall. Talk about my work? He was tired. Talk about our future? Maybe finally starting a family? We'll talk about it later. I wasn't asking for grand romantic gestures or flowery declarations of love. I was just asking for him to be present, to actually listen when I was talking, to see me. The breaking point, the moment the first hairline crack spiderwebbed across the foundation, came last week. I was determined to force a connection. I planned an elaborate date night, securing a reservation at a trendy new downtown restaurant that had a 2-month waiting list. I spent an hour on my hair and makeup, and slipped into a new silk dress, the kind he used to tell me made my eyes sparkle. I was creating the scene for a perfect night, hoping the performance would eventually feel real. An hour before we were supposed to leave, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Caleb. "Have to work late again. Something critical came up. So sorry." I sat there on the edge of our bed, fully dressed, makeup perfect, feeling like a complete and utter fool. The reflection in the mirror was of a woman dressed up for a life she wasn't living. All the frustration, all the lonely nights, all the unheard pleas for attention coalesced into a cold, hard knot of rage in my stomach. When he finally came home around 10 o'clock, His tie loosened, and his face etched with fatigue. I lost it. The carefully constructed dam of my patience shattered. Everything came pouring out in a torrent of bitter accusations and tearful frustrations. He just stood there in the doorway, his briefcase still in his hand, bearing the brunt of my storm with that same quiet, checked-out expression he always wore. And that's what broke me. His silence felt like the ultimate dismissal, the final confirmation that I didn't matter enough to even fight for. That's when I said it. The words were venomous, hurled from a place of deep hurt, designed to inflict a wound as deep as my own. They left my mouth before I could stop them. You're just like your deadbeat father. Useless. The air in the room instantly changed. It became thin, sharp, impossible to breathe. I knew about his father. He had told me early in our relationship, his voice low and vulnerable, about how the man had left when he was a boy. He'd shared how that single act of abandonment had shaped his entire life, instilling in him a deep-seated fear of failure and a relentless drive to be the opposite, to be dependable, to be present, to stay. In that moment, I didn't care. I was so angry, so hurt. I wanted him to feel something, anything. He didn't yell back. He didn't defend himself. He just looked at me, and his mask of detached calm finally broke. It was replaced by an expression I had never seen before, a look of such profound, hollowed-out shock. It was as if I had physically struck him. He visibly flinched, his shoulders slumping as if under an immense weight. Then, without a single word, he turned around and walked into his office, shutting the door quietly behind him. I figured he needed space to cool off. My anger began to recede, replaced by a dull, throbbing guilt. I went to bed, telling myself we would talk in the morning, that we would fix this like we always did. When I woke up the next morning, his side of the bed was cold and empty. His car was gone from the driveway. I thought he'd just gone to work early, or maybe needed some time alone to clear his head after the fight. But the day passed in silence. Then another. His phone went straight to voicemail. His texts went unanswered. It's been 5 days now. 5 days of a silence so absolute it feels like a physical presence in our too-quiet house. I called his sister, Rowan. Her voice was cold, clipped. He's safe, Lydia. That's all I can tell you. What does that even mean? I pleaded. Is he coming home? A pause. You should give him some space. Then she hung up. How am I supposed to fix this if he won't even talk to me? I know what I said was awful, unforgivable even. But everyone says things they don't mean when they're angry, right? He can't just throw away 5 years of marriage, of a life we built together, over one stupid, horrible fight. Can he? The worst part is, our anniversary is next week. I had this whole weekend getaway planned to a quiet inn by the coast. It was supposed to be my way of trying to reconnect, of showing him that I still cared. Now, I'm just sitting here, alone, wondering if the man I married is ever coming back at all. It's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks of a crushing, absolute silence that has become my entire world. And today, I found out why. I was going through our shared email account, the one we used for bills and household admin, looking for a receipt. That's when I saw it. An email from Caleb's boss, sent to the entire company. The subject line read, "Farewell to Caleb." My heart stopped. My hands started to shake as I clicked it open. It was a standard corporate farewell memo, thanking Caleb for his years of dedicated service and wishing him the best in his future endeavors. It announced his resignation, effective immediately. He wasn't coming back. Not to work, not to our life, not to me. I called his boss in a blind panic, my voice a strangled mess. She was surprisingly kind. I think she took pity on me, and then she told me everything. Caleb had been working on a massive, high-pressure project for months. The reason he was staying late, the reason he was so consumed, wasn't because he was ignoring me. It was because he was trying to finish it ahead of schedule. Before what? Before surprising me with a 2-week vacation to Hawaii for our anniversary. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. He had been putting in all those extra hours, burning himself out, so we could actually disconnect and focus on us. And all the while, I was sitting at home, building a narrative of neglect and resentment, seeing only my own reflection in his fatigue. That wasn't even the worst part. His sister, Rowan, finally called me back. Her voice wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy with a grief that felt ancient. She told me everything. The night of our fight, Caleb had already moved the restaurant reservation to a later time. He knew I got the promotion, and he wanted to make the evening a dual celebration. He had flowers delivered to his office, ready to bring home. But then his team hit a major, catastrophic problem with the project. If he didn't stay to fix it, the entire launch would be delayed, and our vacation, the vacation I didn't even know about, would have been jeopardized. When I threw his father in his face, it wasn't just another fight for him. Rowan filled in the horrifying details I had only known in outline. His dad didn't just leave. He left on Caleb's 12th birthday. He'd told Caleb they were going out for a special dinner. Just the two of them. Caleb waited for hours, dressed in his best clothes, sitting on the front steps until it got dark. His dad never showed up. He never came back at all. And here I was, accusing Caleb of being exactly like the man who had shattered his world. Here I was, recreating the scene of his deepest trauma, a special night, a promise broken, and the crushing feeling of being left behind by someone he loved. The more I learned, the worse the pit in my stomach grew. Rowan told me Caleb has been in therapy for years, dealing with complex abandonment issues he'd carried since childhood. He never told me. Not because he was hiding things, but because he didn't want me to see him as damaged, as broken. All those times I thought he was being distant and withdrawn, he was actually in the thick of a silent battle, working through his own demons, trying to be a better man, trying with every fiber of his being not to repeat his father's mistakes. I went to his old office, desperate. I thought maybe his work friends could help me reach him. And that's where I found out more. One of his colleagues mentioned, offhand, that Caleb had been skipping lunch for months. He'd eat a sad sandwich at his desk while watching YouTube videos about romantic vacation spots in Maui, planning everything down to the last detail. God, I feel like such an idiot. A selfish, blind idiot. His best friend, Gavin, finally took pity on me after my 10th pleading voicemail. He told me Caleb was staying with him. For a moment, a sliver of hope ignited in my chest. Then Gavin extinguished it. "Back off, Lydia," he said, his voice hard as steel. "Just back off. He's not in a good place right now. My showing up would only make things worse. How am I supposed to just sit here and do nothing while my marriage falls apart? While the man I love is broken somewhere, thinking he's a failure because of me?" I keep replaying that night in my head, an endless, torturous loop. If I'd just waited 10 minutes. If I'd let him explain. If I hadn't been so completely wrapped up in my own feelings, my own perceived slights. If I hadn't said those words. The thing is, I didn't even mean it. Not really. Caleb is nothing like his father. He is the most thoughtful, responsible, and steadfast person I have ever known. He is the man who always tries to take care of everyone else, often at his own expense. I just wanted to hurt him, because I was hurting, and I chose the cruelest, most precise weapon I could find. The house feels huge now, cavernous. Every room echoes with his absence. I keep finding little things that make everything worse, like tiny monuments to my failure. Sticky notes on his desk with scribbled ideas. Sunrise hike on Haleakala. A crumpled gift receipt from a jewelry store in his office trash can. He was trying. He was trying so hard, and I was too self-absorbed to see it. Last night, in a fit of desperation, I drove by Gavin's place. Caleb's car was parked outside. I killed my engine and just sat there in the dark, watching the house. Through the living room window, I could see him. He was just sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, his shoulders slumped. I have never seen him look so empty, so utterly defeated. I wanted to run in, to throw myself at his feet, to explain everything, to beg him to come home. But I just sat there in my car, crying like an idiot. Because I finally, truly, understood. I had done exactly what his father did. I had taken his trust, the fragile trust he had worked so hard to build in another person, and I had shattered it into a million pieces. I got served with divorce papers today. 3 weeks of silence, and this is how he tells me it's over. The crisp, sterile envelope was just sitting there on the kitchen counter when I got home from work. He must have come by while I was out, a ghost in his own home. Reading through them was surreal. The legal jargon felt like a foreign language trying to describe a wound that was still raw. Irreconcilable differences. As if that clinical, detached phrase could possibly contain the magnitude of what I had done. As if it could explain the way I had weaponized his deepest pain against him. His lawyer had included a polite, impersonal note about arranging a time for him to pick up his personal belongings. They wanted to schedule it for a weekday, while I was at work, to minimize any discomfort. He doesn't even want to be in the same room as me anymore. He doesn't want to breathe the same air. I broke down and called my mom, the dam finally bursting for good. I told her everything, the whole ugly, selfish story, without any of the justifications or excuses I had been telling myself. When I finished, choking back sobs, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then she said, her voice gentle but firm, "Lydia, honey, when was the last time you asked Caleb how he was doing? I mean, really asked, and then listened to the answer?" I started to defend myself out of pure reflex, but then I stopped. I actually thought about it, scrolling back through the mental calendar of the last few months, and I couldn't remember. I had spent weeks, months talking at him about my promotion, my feelings, my needs. But Caleb, he had been quietly carrying the weight of his own project, the pressure of his secret anniversary surprise, the ghosts of his past, and I had never even noticed. I never made the space for him to be anything other than the stable, dependable rock I needed him to be. The worst part came later. I was clearing out his desk, as his lawyer had requested, boxing up his things. Tucked away in the back of the bottom drawer, I found it, the anniversary gift. It was a beautiful leather travel folio. Inside were 2 plane tickets to Hawaii, resort reservations for a 2-week stay at a beachfront bungalow, and underneath it all, there was a small moleskine notebook. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was filled with his neat, blocky handwriting. He had mapped out every single day of our trip. A sunrise hike on the beach, a couple's massage, a private dinner under the stars. He'd even written down conversation starters, little prompts for himself. Ask Lydia about her dreams for her new role. Talk about starting a family. Is she ready? Tell her about therapy progress. Tell her she makes me feel safe. That last one broke me. I collapsed onto the floor, the notebook clutched to my chest, and I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. My friend Ashley tried to comfort me over the phone, saying all couples go through rough patches. But this wasn't a rough patch. This was a demolition. I took the one person in my life who had never, ever let me down, and I had systematically convinced him that he was just like the one person who did. How do you come back from that? I tried writing him a letter. I spent hours on it, pouring out everything I had realized, how profoundly, sickeningly sorry I was. I drove to Gavin's place to deliver it, a desperate, last-ditch effort. Gavin answered the door, his face a mask of weary sympathy. He took one look at the letter in my hand and shook his head slowly. "He's not here anymore, Lydia." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "He got a job offer in Seattle," Gavin said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "A really good one. He's already gone. The thing that kills me now is how everyone talks about him. In his absence, the full picture of the man I was married to has come into focus, drawn by the stories of others. His old co-workers, our neighbors, even my own family. They tell me little things he did. Small ways he looked out for me that I never even noticed. Like how he always made sure to fill up my car with gas when it was getting low because he knew I hated going to the gas station. Or how he kept a calendar reminder for when my favorite authors released new books, so he could pre-order them for me. He was showing me he loved me every single day, in 100 quiet, steady ways. I was just too busy listening for a marching band to hear his soft, constant music. When I was cleaning out the last of his office, I found his therapy journal. I know I shouldn't have read it. It was a violation of the last piece of him that was truly private. But I couldn't help myself. The last entry was from the night of our fight. He wrote about feeling like a complete failure, at work and at home. He wrote about wondering if he was destined to hurt people, if his father's failings were encoded in his DNA. He wrote, "I just wanted to make her happy. I thought if I could just get this project done, we could get away and fix things. But maybe I'm the thing that's broken." He wasn't the one hurting people. I was. Today would have been our first day in Hawaii. Instead, I'm sitting in our empty house, surrounded by boxes, looking at pictures of us from when we first got married. We looked so happy, so sure about our future. Now all I can think about is how I took that bright-eyed, trusting man and made him relive his worst nightmare. Gavin texted me earlier. A short, simple message. "Heard from Caleb. He's doing better. Starting fresh." A few minutes later, another text came through. Maybe it's better this way, Lydia. Some things you just can't fix. I wanted to argue, to scream that love should be enough to fix anything. But maybe that's the problem. I've been acting like love is just a feeling, a grand, sweeping emotion that should sustain itself. But it's not. It's an action. It's a series of daily choices. And my actions? They showed Caleb that his biggest fear was right all along. The people you love the most are the ones who can hurt you the worst. The divorce was finalized yesterday. 6 months. 6 months, and it's just over. A piece of paper declares that the life we built together no longer legally exists. Caleb didn't even come to the courthouse. His lawyer handled everything. The last document I will ever sign with his name on it. And he couldn't even be there, or wouldn't. I suppose it doesn't matter which. I started therapy last month. Not to try to get him back. I know that ship has sailed, crossed an ocean, and docked in a new continent. I'm going because I finally realized I need to understand why. Why I did what I did. Why I was incapable of seeing beyond my own needs. My therapist, Dr. Evelyn Reed, is a kind woman with sharp, intelligent eyes that seem to see right through the excuses I didn't even know I was making. Last week, she asked me a question that has kept me up every night since. Lydia, she said gently, why did you feel you were entitled to use his deepest trauma against him? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Not really. But I'm starting to see the patterns. How I always made everything about me. How I called it communication, when really, I was just talking at him, not with him. How I blamed him for not meeting my needs while being completely oblivious to his. Rowan reached out last week. She said Caleb is doing well in Seattle. He bought a small house near the water. He got promoted at his new job. She sent a picture. He's standing on a hiking trail, smiling again. It's that same easy, genuine smile I used to wake up to every morning. Only now, it's in a life I'm not a part of. It's a smile for someone else. Then came the final, most devastating act of his quiet kindness. A package arrived. Inside were all of our wedding photos. They weren't thrown in a box in anger or spite. Each frame was carefully wrapped in bubble wrap. There was a small, handwritten note on top. I think you should have these. Thank you for the good memories. See. That's Caleb. Thoughtful, even in goodbye. Kind, even after I was so cruel. I ran into his mom at the grocery store last week. I froze in the frozen foods aisle, not knowing what to do. She saw me, and for a moment, I thought she might walk past. But she stopped. I tried to apologize, to explain, my words stumbling over each other in a pathetic jumble. She just looked at me, her eyes filled not with anger, but with a deep, bottomless sadness. You know, Lydia, she said, her voice soft but steady. When Caleb was little, after his father left, he used to set an extra place at the dinner table every single night. For a year, just in case his dad came back. It took him years to stop. Years to trust that someone could love him and actually stay. Then she just walked away, leaving me standing there between the frozen pizzas and the ice cream, the cold from the freezers seeping into my bones. Dr. Reed says I need to find a way to forgive myself, eventually. But how? How do you forgive yourself for becoming someone's worst fear? For taking a person who trusted you with their deepest wound and poking it with a sharp stick, just because you were having a bad day? The house sold last week. Caleb let me keep all the money from the sale. His lawyer said he didn't want anything that reminded him of us. I'm moving into a small apartment closer to work. Starting fresh, I guess. But everywhere I go, there are reminders. The coffee shop where we had our first date, the park where he proposed, the restaurant where we were supposed to have our last anniversary dinner. Yesterday, while packing the last of the boxes, I found his therapy notebook again. I flipped to a random page. His handwriting filled the lines. I'm trying so hard not to be him, to be present, to show up, to love completely. Sometimes I worry it's not enough. It was enough. It was more than enough. I was the one who couldn't see it. Someone asked me recently if I still love him. The truth is, I don't think I truly knew what love was supposed to be. I thought it was about the big moments, the grand gestures, the feeling of being special. But Caleb, he showed me what it really is. It's about the quiet things, the everyday choices, the constant unspoken decision to be there, to care, to try. The moving truck comes tomorrow. Rowan is helping me pack the last few things. She says she's doing it for Caleb, to give him peace of mind that everything's taken care of. She told me he's dating someone new. A kindergarten teacher. Someone gentle and kind, she said. Someone who will never, ever use his past as a weapon. I'd like to say I've learned some grand, transformative lesson from all of this. That I'm a completely different person now. But the truth is, I'm just a woman who is beginning to understand the sheer scale of the damage you can do when you're so focused on your own hurt that you can't see anyone else's. Sometimes, sorry isn't enough. Sometimes, the wreckage is too vast to rebuild. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them go, to let them sail away toward a new shore where they can finally find the happiness they always deserved, the happiness you were too broken to give them.